Here we go. Almost missed the landing zone there. How you doing? Greetings and salutations this fine evening. Don't you hate it when people talk like that? They sound so fake. Hi, greetings. How you doing? Totally untrustworthy. Completely untrustworthy. Oh, everybody keeps asking me about simulation theory. Holographic paradigm. Simulation theory, of course, came about in comic books, and then it was spawned in the Matrix. And anybody that thinks we're living in a simulation, a program, it's just a little bit on the crazy side. Just a little bit crazy. The one thing that, when I was much younger, that was bandied about, of course, I have no connection to the crystal rubbers, not that this is a crystal, or the white lighters, that they got right just like a broken clock is right twice a day, that I would have thought that they would have had wrong, that I postulated early in my life, was the holographic paradigm. Now as the world's foremost expert on magnetism, which I can easily say that I am, and having spent an enormous amount of time in deep thought about many, many countless things, it's actually now undeniable that the holographic paradigm is accurate. The only problem is that every book out there about the holographic paradigm, including the first book that was written about that topic, are nonsense. They never hit the mark. They're completely off target. There's nothing within these books. Here we go. Here's a holographic paradigm. There's another one. It's really thick. It's written by an author that I have absolutely no respect for. His first name is the same as mine. He writes a lot of white lighter stuff. You know what a white lighter is? Basically, it's a crystal rubber, you know? You know, like the tinfoil hat and the crystals all around the place. Yeah, white lighter. So there's another book out there that I perused once a couple decades ago. Here's another one, Holographic Universe. All of these books that I have in my hand, and I actually have a couple more books, including various books that contain articles on the holographic paradigm, or the holographic universe, and they're all full of garbage. There's absolutely nothing within them. Mother Nature, or Natura Naturans, is incredibly simple. Yeah, I like to keep it simple. People like simple. Everything today, because everybody's so busy, should be in a soundbite of like 20 minutes or less. And of course, a lot of topics are incredibly convoluted, shall we say, simple but not simplex, and fitting them inside 10, 15, or 20 minutes is rather difficult. However, I can do it on the holographic paradigm. Yeah, let's take this right from the get-go and make it really simple, because Mother Nature, as I've humorously said, not that I think that there's an actual entity named Mother Nature, Natura Naturans, simple chick, hairy armpits, hemp skirt, muddy feet. She works off of pressure mediation, centrifugal divergence, centripetal convergence, force and motion, inertia and acceleration. Conjugate geometry of the entire universe is the magnetic and the dielectric. Yeah? Everything is nothing other than a modality of that. All fields are just ether perturbation modalities. Magnetism is the dielectric field. So-called gravity is no different than electrostatic cling. You ever opened up a box with styrofoam pellets and the styrofoam pellets are stuck to your hand? That's all gravity is. The only distinction between that and so-called magnetic attraction, which does not exist at all, is that one is point source mutual mass acceleration and the other one is non-point source mutual mass acceleration. There's the same distinction between an incandescent light bulb, which is non-point source, and a point source object, such as a laser. I used to have a laser laying around here somewhere. It doesn't matter if I find it right now. Oh, there it is. There we go. I'm pretty sure everybody's familiar with lasers. Point source. Yeah, only distinction. So let's keep it simple. Everything in the universe, let's make a declarative statement which is 100% irrefutable by anybody in this world. 100%. Everything in the universe has volume and mass due to one thing and one thing only: magnetism. Specifically, the field geometry of magnetism is the torus. Yes? This is the geometry of the loss of energy or inertia, which manifests the three-dimensional force vector that we call magnetism. The toroidal geometry. Yeah? The geometry of force and motion, literally, i.e. centrifugal divergence. The three-dimensional, the 3D S-curve, excuse me, I was hunting for the words, a 3D S-curve. You actually take a piece of wire, bend it like an S, take each end, bend it inverse one another. You'll actually have a single vector of the extrapolation of the exterior geometry of a torus. Yeah, just imagine a three-dimensional S-curve. You bend a piece of wire, and of course imagine it in 3D. Yeah, so everything has volume due to magnetism and magnetism only. The after effect, and of course magnetism is the negative image of infinity or eternity. We could say of counter space, well, what would be infinity, or what would be the absolute? Pure energy, unmanifest, because manifestation, of course, is a force vector. But that energy or inertia must manifest something due to the loss of that energy or inertia. And of course, this is what human beings extrapolate and conflate. There's a great word, conflate, with something that has no properties, as Nikola Tesla famously said, because space has no properties. Yes, the after effect of a divergent magnetic field is space. Also, too, the creation of mass and magnitude. Yeah, so we have magnetism, the creation of space. Also, too, the creation of time, but time is not a thing. Yeah, every ancient culture said time is a number 4, and number 4 is the only number that doesn't exist in the first 5 digits of the Fibonacci sequence. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5. What's the only number missing? The number for time. Chinese and Japanese, the word for 4 means death. Yeah, as you probably know. Why does 4 mean death? Well, 4 equals time, but 4 also equals death. That's because anything that undergoes time is subject to death. Anything that has a beginning in time has an end in time, and therefore experiences death. And is also, too, a consubstantial entity by default. Yeah? So time does not exist, and neither does space, because space has no properties. The notion vis-a-vis relativity and quantum that you could bend space or warp space is the reification of space as something. Because when you eliminate out the ether, you must replace it with something else. Yeah, and they replaced it with something that has no teeth. Time and space. Time does not exist, it is only a measure. So everything that has volume. Yeah. And by the way, I collect true art holograms, which are really quite rare, because making a true art hologram is incredibly difficult. You ever seen the hologram on your credit card? Imagine something 1,000 times better than that. A true art hologram is absolutely incredible. Just incredible. Most people have never seen a true art hologram. One of my favorite devices, of course, is the ferrocell. I've probably got over 1,000 videos on the ferrocell, i.e. the supercell. There's just basically a drop of liquid between 2 optically flat pieces of glass. It's over there. I can't grab it. It's not within arm's length reach. Yep. So it's about a micron thin. And yet the most incredible holography is created by using a magnet, that quarter drop of liquid between those 2 optically flat pieces of glass. Why would that be? Because you actually shoot light into the ferrocell or the supercell. Just type in supercell or ferrocell on YouTube. Most of the videos are mine. Like I said, I've got over 1,000 of them. The most incredible holography you've ever seen, because most people have never held a supercell in their hand. They've seen the videos that I've posted on YouTube. But the reason for that is that holography is due to magnetism, the magnetic field, the constructive and destructive interference of the manifestation of light that's actually pointed directly inwards towards the... And of course, I've actually made a supercell using sunlight. People say, oh, you're just looking at the number of LEDs ringing the supercell. It's like, that's not true at all. I'll just use one using a single light source, which is the sun. You get the exact same holography, so it has nothing to do with LEDs or the number of LEDs. So time, of course, as I said, does not exist. It's not found in the Fibonacci sequence. True holography, let's keep it simple, so I'm trying to keep it within like a 15 to 20 minute video, is one of 2 things. Magnetism and 1 over 5 to the power of -3, i.e. the extrinsic attribute of the absolute. This is the same reason, it's my discovery by the way, reason why I have that tattooed on the inside of my right wrist. The extrinsic attribute of the absolute. Extrinsic attribute of light, of course, would be illumination. The manifestation of the principle by, through, and which its attributional nature gives rise thereto. No one's ever seen light. They've only ever seen illumination, the extrinsic attribute of the light. Of course, then we have to get into discussing light, of which I've made many videos. Light's not an emission, it's not a particle, it's not a wave, it's not a wave-particle duality, and it doesn't have a speed. It has a rate of induction. It's a hysteresis of the ether. We all think that something that has motion or manifestation, it takes X period of time to be from here over to here, that is obviously moving between the two. And you have the same idea about sound. Nikola Tesla famously said, light can be nothing other than a sound wave in the ether. Well, glory be. Sound, of course, is not an emission either. We have the idea of the speed of sound, breaking the sound barrier. Well, sound has a speed. It must be an emission. Well, it doesn't have any of that stuff. It's a hysteresis, the manifestation of the frequency, the transverse manifestation of same, maximum rate of disturbance of the nitrogen and oxygen making up the air. Speed of sound. Sound is not an emission. Nothing emits sound and nothing emits light. Isn't that a masterful discovery? Even Nikola Tesla mentioned it, that sound is nothing, light is nothing other than a sound wave in the ether. Yet, you were never taught that in high school or college or anywhere else, and of course neither was I. You know, I had the brains to know that I should go seeking after the masters, the people that actually understood nature, or understood it a lot better than everybody else. And of course I went looking to those people, and thankfully I ignored all my teachers because they were all fools. But anyway, time doesn't exist, and neither does space. Space is the after effect of a divergent magnetic field. The other holographic paradigm is, of course, water. The water molecule, which of course I have it upside down tattooed right here on my hand, is the exact same Pythagorean perfect incommensurable triangle, 1 phi of the Pythagoreans and the Platonists. Without water, consciousness is completely impossible. Consciousness is manifest in the holographic geometry that is the water molecule. Without water, there's no life. Without life, there's no consciousness. Life, consciousness, for all manners of effect other than nuance and discussing metaphysics, are of course one and the same thing. So, water is a holographic antenna for the manifestation of consciousness, and that's of course life. Life is the consubstantiality of course, matter and spirit. Matter and spirit's consubstantiality, just like the broadcast from a radio, the broadcast from the radio is not the same as a signal. That's the consubstantiality of the radio and the signal manifesting, of course, the broadcast, which would be analogous to, of course, consciousness itself. So, the Fibonacci Paradigm. So, all of these silly little books, and I've got all of them, essentially, including all the other little articles, they're full of nothing but a bunch of speculation and nonsense, and they never get to the heart of the matter. There's only two principles to understand about the holographic paradigm, which I would have thought very early in life would be a white lighter principle. Crystal rubber. It's like, you know, there's one they actually got right. And of course they didn't come up with it, thank goodness for that. I mean, it existed eons and eons ago. Of course they didn't have a word for holography in ancient Greek or Pali, but they did describe it. This completely unreal manifestation, due to two things. The ancient Pythagoreans call this yugata. There's a reason why I have yugata actually tattooed on my knuckles there. If you actually try to look up yugata online, you'll see it says harmony, or something synonymous with harmony. But it doesn't mean that. It means perfect incommensurability for the manifestation of one or more things. Through which, by which, and of which we're referring to the Fibonacci sequence. And people say the golden ratio. The golden ratio is so heavily weighted with a bunch of silly ideas. People say, what is the golden ratio? Well, hey, it's beauty and harmony in nature. Well, attributionally that's the case, but that's not what the Fibonacci sequence or the golden ratio technically means. It's a proportionality of one to itself. That's why this is the only perfect geometric incommensurability of absolute perfection of the one relational to manifestation, i.e. 1 phi, and of course the incommensurable cut, which is not tattooed on my hand here, 1 over phi, all of which equals phi to the power of 3, or 4.23606, or 1 over phi to the power of negative 3, which we get phi 1, 1, 1 over phi, the perfect incommensurable perfection between the absolute, its attribute, and manifestation. This is the same geometry also, too, of the Pythagorean pentagram. You just actually take this same 1 phi isosceles triangle in triplicate, and you have the Pythagorean pentagram. And it's also, too, the exact same geometry of water, without which life is completely impossible. So, holographics. Water, the Fibonacci sequence. Magnetism, by the way, follows the Fibonacci sequence, the toroidal manifestation of the constructive and destructive interference between the magnetic and the dielectric, both of which are one and the same thing. You want to talk about perfect yin and yang symbolism? Well, that would be the magnetic and the dielectric. The loss of the energy or inertia due to the attributional nature of the dielectric manifests magnetism, specifically the conjugate geometry of the torus and the hyperboloid. The toroidal geometry, of course, being the manifestation of space, vectors, mass, magnitude. And when you have mass and magnitude, you have time. But time is only a measure. Time does not exist at all. It exists conventionally, but time does not exist ultimately at all. Time is not a thing. You can't bend space and time, contrary to all the silly, ridiculous, little, goofy science fiction movies and TV shows that we all grew up with. We're going to bend space-time, sir, and we're going to engage the warp drive and bend space-time. Makes for great movies, but that's not how Mother Nature works. Yeah, Mother Nature is really simple. The holographic paradigm, once again. Place, space, and time equals magnetism and the magnetism's attributional effects. When this is present, that is present. When magnetism is present, we have the creation of space, the after effect of a divergent magnetic field, we have mass and magnitude, in which, and by which we have this thing that we all swim in as beings of mass and magnitude, i.e. human beings, which is time. We think time is real, and conventionally it is, but time is not real at all, ultimately. The holographic paradigm, or whatever you want to call it, is 100% real. All of this stuff is unreal. It's due to magnetism and magnetism only, i.e. the attributional nature of the dielectric. Mass, matter, magnitude, i.e. magnetism, as well as time, which comes with mass and magnitude, because that's all time is a measure, are completely unreal. Everything that we think is real is unreal. The ancients all said this, by the way, both the Greeks and the Indians and the Egyptians. We think of everything upside down to how it really is. Then we have the inverted tree symbolism, which is all over Greece, all over India. You have everything upside down and backwards. All ignorant human beings have everything upside down. Place, space, and time, i.e. magnetism and its after effects. And of course, the other holographic geometry of perfection, water. The incommensurability of same gives rise to life. Where there is water, there is life. So, all of which, magnetism and water, follow the Fibonacci sequence of golden ratio perfection, which is nothing other than a reference to 1 and its attributional nature, because phi is to 1 as 1 is to phi. You say that to a mathematician, however, they're like, well, I understand that, and that's mathematically accurate, but I don't understand what its significance is. These are the people that know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. It's like, you don't understand the fact that phi is to 1 as 1 is to phi. Everything that is beautiful in life, as well as consciousness itself, is nothing other than a multiplicative manifestation of the absolute principle itself. They don't get it. They only count things. They don't know the significance of anything. This is the reason why I have no respect for mathematicians and most teachers, for that matter. So, anyway, yeah, the Platonists called this yugata. But if you look up yugata, you'll say, well, it means health and proportion. Well, attributionally, that's correct, because there must be harmony for there to be health. There must be harmony for things to work perfectly in concord with one another, i.e. matter and life and consciousness, because that's all the broadcast is, i.e. empirical consciousness. We have the interlocutor, which is holographic, because that's where consciousness is. It's not in the water molecule itself. It's in the holographic geometry of water. Everybody keeps asking that, and I don't know why they don't understand that. It's like, where is consciousness in water? You said consciousness is the interlocutor for the manifestation of consciousness, but where is it in the water? Well, it's not in the oxygen atom. It's not in either one of the hydrogen atoms. It's actually in the geometry of perfect proportionality, perfect incommensurability, i.e. phi, because this is the water molecule. 1, 1 phi, and the incommensurable cut of 1 over phi, all of which equal phi cubed, and 1 over phi to the power of negative 3. Perfect, absolute, and by the way, that's the only geometry in the entire universe that has perfect incommensurability. Upside down, front to back, left to right, not that the water molecule has that. I mean, there is nothing within that water molecule, that perfect isosceles triangle, the Pythagorean. Why do you think this particular geometry makes up the Pythagorean pentagram? All you do is take the same isosceles triangle right here, and you take it in triplicate, and that's the Pythagorean pentagram. Why do you think that was their symbol? Why? The great Pythagoras himself, and who knows before him, why do you think it's like, well, he just indiscriminately chose that as the symbol to represent Pythagoreanism? Well, that's just ridiculous. I mean, nobody with a quarter of a brain or a spoonful of brains would think something that ignorant, of course. So, the holographic paradigm, I can tell you with every ounce of my being, is 100% real. The whole matrix stuff, like we're a program in the matrix, I've seen not only a little bit, I've seen less than zero for this. Everybody wants to talk about simulation theory. I already saw the program in the matrix. Well, that makes for great science fiction movies. However, like I said 30 years ago, the holographic paradigm, superficially, without any real examination when I was a teenager, seemed like white lighters, because the white lighters latched on to the holographic paradigm or the holographic universe idea. However, all these books written about the same, are just full of trash. None of these people that have supposedly done a bunch of study on holographic paradigm or holographic universe said anything intelligent. I mean, I literally mean it. I've had these books for ages, and there's nothing within the covers of these things that, nothing. But that's not a white lighter idea, the holographic paradigm or the holographic universe. The Greeks said this, the Indians said this, the Pythagoreans said this, the Platonists, the Neoplatonists, Pythagoras, Proclus, Numenius, Syrianus, Iamblichus, on and on and on and on, included Porphyry. Letters to his wife Marcella mentions the holographic universe. However, those words are not used specifically, but that's what the implication is, because there's no word for holography, back in the ancient days. But the same thing was said, because nothing is known except in the modality of the knower. So the holographic paradigm or the holographic universe, whatever you want to call it, is 100% real. So magnetism and the perfect incommensurability and the interlocutor between spirit and matter, that being water. There's a reason why I have this geometry tattooed on the back of my right hand. I see it every day. However, when you have tattoos for decades, you don't really see them every day. They just become invisible. They're visible to everybody else. But magnetism is the perfect, most simple, fundamental holography of the entire universe. Because with space, time, mass, and magnitude, we have, due to the manifestation of magnetism, which magnetism is only the extrinsic attribute of the dielectric, that loss of that energy or inertia, which is attributional to the dielectric, necessitatively so. The euristos dias, the tolma, the ananke of the absolute itself, just like light and illumination, is magnetism. The loss of energy and or inertia, both of which are the same thing fundamentally from the premise of metaphysics, manifests the toroidal geometry, but the after effect of same means that magnetism itself has its own attributes. When this is present, that is present. When magnetism is manifest, we have another set of attributional principles. They're not really principles, but they are attributional principles relative to magnetism, i.e. the attributes of magnetism, which is the fundamental basis for all holography of the entire universe. Because there is no mass and no magnitude in the entire universe without magnetism. That's not my view or belief or feeling. It's 100% undeniable, rock-hard fact from one end of this universe to the other. Nothing has mass or magnitude without magnetism. Nothing. Even today's foolish scientists who get very little right, they will tell you, well, if every atom were reduced of its interatomic volume measured in picometers. In other words, you took out all the space, if you will, and it's not space. It's actually, every atom is nothing other than a magnetodielectric dynamo, which has mass and magnitude due to that energy, because every atom is a dynamo. If that were reduced and you only had the nucleus, then the Earth would be something about the size of a pea or a marble. And that's something these scientists who get most everything wrong are accurate about. The Earth would be the size, or smaller, than a marble. But the reason why it's not is because of one thing, magnetism. Nothing has mass or magnitude without magnetism. Nothing. But magnetism is the unreal extrinsic attribute of the loss of energy or inertia of the dielectric. The entire holographic universe is due to that incommensurability of water as the interlocutor for the manifestation of life, and for mass and magnitude of the entire universe due to magnetism and magnetism only. Specifically, it follows a Poincaré disk model of projective geometry. And by the way, If you want to know the person that Einstein stole 99% of his stuff from, it's not my feeling or opinion, it's a hardcore fact. He stole it from Henri Poincaré. That's Henri Poincaré. Henri Poincaré. Yeah. Stolen. There have been more than a few books written about this fact. So, the holographic universe, not my opinion or feeling, is utterly real. It's undeniable. It's rock hard. The ancients have been talking about it even though they didn't have a word for holography, obviously so. It is entirely real. Everything within this universe of mass, magnitude, time, and volume is unreal. It is holographic. The ancients would have called it incommensurable. They would have called it ananke. They would have called it tolma. There are a few different words for it. In the Pali, the word would be maya. There's a few other words in Pali, too, for the holographic universe. So, anyway, thank you so much for watching, and have a lovely day.